Good afternoon and welcome to 3 o'clock with SOC. Give me a second so that I can welcome in our Spanish-speaking neighbors. Buenas tardes, gracias por estar con nosotros hoy en la 3 p.m. con SOC. Si quieren acceso al programa en español, por favor marquen el número que aparece en pantalla 425-436-6200. Comparten el contraseña cuando le contestan la llamada que es 627-682. Thank you for being with us. My name is Tammy Rivera. I'm the Executive Director and Lead Organizer for Southside Organizing Center, SOC or SOC. We are here for you as we have been since the pandemic started. You can reach us in all the ways you normally do, except for in person quite yet until we're safe enough to do. You can reach us via phone, 414-672-8090, email soc@socmilwaukee.org, or you can go to our website at www.socmilwaukee.org, where we have a full page dedicated to information, resources, and actions you can take in response to COVID-19 or the coronavirus. I want to remind you that you can enter a drawing with us for a $50 gift card this week. A little different than what we were doing previously. We still want you to fill out our survey daily, and we need you to do that, folks. If there's something that you appreciate from the forum, the thing that we would ask you in return is to take the 5 minutes every day that you watch it to fill out the survey. It just asks, like, the information that you heard, was it useful? What do you like? What should we change? And any ideas? And that's the exchange we would ask for if you could do us, because we need that for our funders. And you can, contribute to the program. And then we have a special promotion going on this week. Graduates count to us, and we want you to be counted in the census. And so please make sure to submit your graduation photos, and somehow tie that into filling out the census, whether you're a mom and you filled out the census and your kid is graduating, or a parent, or whether you're the graduate and you helped your parents fill out the census, or you filled it out yourself. Real easy. All you need to do is submit one photo of both of those things happening, maybe a graduate on the computer filling out the census, or with their parent filling it out, or you can send us two separate photos, one of your graduation photo and one of you proof of the census, or be creative, just as long as you can prove that you did something census registration related, and you'll be entered to win a drawing for $50. I want to remind you all of a couple of things. One, please don't miss the program next week, the forum on Monday. We have Karen Rodker, an attorney with the ACLU, who'll be sharing about reminding us about the ACLU settlement and how it ties into what I've been sharing with you all week now, the Collaborative Community Committee, as it has been named as the oversight committee for the ACLU lawsuit. And then we have Dr. Tony Baez with us, legacy civil rights leader, who's going to be talking about protests and unrest and rioting and police brutality and racism from a historical till now perspective. And we'll have with us next week Dr. Rob Smith, professor of Marquette University, but also the director of the Center for Urban Research, Teaching and Outreach, to give us a historical perspective on the civil rights movement. And we're hoping to be able to schedule in the Office of Violence Prevention and many more. I want to take a moment and have us all sort of collectively just put our souls and hearts together. Today is Orange Day. Our very own Office of Violence Prevention is sponsoring or hosting this today across the city. Earlier, they had a conference that I got to listen into for a little bit, but they were making sure that all of us are aware and acting regarding eliminating gun violence. And we're doing so in honor of Breonna Taylor, who turns 27 today, and her favorite color was orange. And she was part of President Obama's procession of youth. And then not too long after that, lost her life to gun violence. And so that's why you're seeing folks wear orange today, and we want to honor that. We want to also share our solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are protesting the racism and police brutality that's taking place across this nation and continuously. And so we're with you, and our efforts are going into this forum and educating folks and in solidarity with you. And as we move on, we'll be sharing more about our efforts in those aspects as well, including what I've shared earlier, the Collaborative Community Committee. And Alderman Perez and I will talk a little more like that. Before we begin our program, I want to make sure to share a disclaimer with you. The views and opinions shared today do not necessarily reflect those of SOC because of the type of organization that we are. I also want to note that for our Spanish-speaking neighbors, in addition to you being able to view the program simultaneously and hear it and respond in Spanish, you can also see the previous forums dubbed in Spanish. So we take the Spanish interpretation and cover the video, so you can see any of our former forums here on Facebook under our video playlist or on YouTube from now to the time we started. Any of our programs you can access, and you'll be seeing it and hearing it in Spanish. And so want to make sure that you know that that's available. Great. And so what I'd like to do now is invite on Alderman Perez, José Pérez. Hola, Alderman Perez.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and appreciate all the work you're doing.
Absolutely. We've been on together, I think, daily talking or in video conferences for a couple of weeks straight now. So I'm glad that we get to share that with our residents and that you can be with us. Alderman Perez, as some of you may know, there's a big safety meeting taking place now, so we took a break from that to jump over here, and then we have to release him pretty quickly. So I asked him if he could just share from his point of view, the work that we've been doing as a partner since, I think, 2016 on the emergency, the Near Southside Emergency Response Collaborative that we founded together in response to, I believe at that time, the murder of Seville Smith and the unrest that arose. We wanted to create this collaborative, and I'll let him talk about that, and then I'll jump in a little later. And then we'll want to welcome your questions and comments and problem solving as always.
Oh, well, thank you for having us. As you know, we pulled together several community members on the Near South Side to look at one with any civic participation or civil unrest in reaction to any type of police brutality, or just speaking out against any injustice. And kind of, when you look at it, the racial, any discrimination that's institutional, we wanted to be ready on the South Side, that we had people at the table talking to one another, working with one another, and to welcome any action, any civic action, protesting, marching that would need any assistance, guidance, and just welcome anyone coming to the South Side as a form of bridge building and peace. And whether they're people marching that live on the South Side, live other parts of the city, or come together, that we were prepared to welcome and to really monitor things so that peaceful protesters aren't met with any undue force or any undue violence. And so we wanted to make sure that, and we wanted to be peacekeepers in that sense. And with that in mind, as we were prepared and ready to rock and roll with that, we also kept in mind, how can we continue to talk and work with on some of the deeper root issues? How do we keep the community engaged? How do we get their input and create a vehicle so that folks know that they were being heard and that we could implement some change and reform with the police department?
That's right. And so to give people a little historical timeline, so that happened, Seville Smith. There was unrest after that. There was a van that was turned on fire on the South Side in the Pick and Save parking lot. And we said, we really need to come together. And so At that time, Alderman Perez and I partnered, like he said, and invited, I think, every Southside formal group together that we knew existed. Out of that, people showed up. We had several meetings, and came the purpose for the group, which is we're going to work on the root causes, and we're going to work on creating safe spaces for children, youth, and families, especially to congregate. And so we identified Kazi and the Journey House as two physical locations at that time, but we're in quarantine now. And so that work, we identified a steering committee that could work together, and then things sort of, went calming down, and we didn't, continue as forcefully as I would like looking back now on the issue. And then our energies went in other places, right? Like SOC's energy went into the Collaborative Community Committee. Anyway, in the wake of what was happening with Joel Acevedo and George Floyd, Alderman Perez and I decided to reactivate our efforts with the Near Southside Peace Collaborative. And the third prong of the initiative was root causes, peace, and to work across the city with our other brothers and sisters in this cause. And so we decided to reactivate it. It took us a little longer, like all things. Here we are. We would have liked to have done it 2 weeks ago, but I was dealing with a lot, and so was Alderman Perez. And since then, we invited Alderman Zamarripa, new Southside alderperson, to join us, and she has agreed. And to let you all know, we had an initial meeting of the founders, and then this morning we had a meeting with the steering committee that represents a cross section of groups on the South Side, and we're going to have another meeting on Friday with the purpose, you all, of addressing root causes of how do we keep our protesters and residents and neighborhoods safe, and how do we work across the city with other like-minded folks on those issues. Alderman Perez, can you give us a little update in terms of, you're going to have to leave in a second, but tell us what's happening at the safety committee so folks hear about it, as far as you know.
Well, what's happening is that right now the mayor, the police department, and the Fire and Police Commission, at the request of the aldermen, are explaining and talking about the need for a curfew and what they consider unlawful assembly, as we've seen videos, disturbing videos of how people were arrested and used on tear gas. And so we're asking the police department and the mayor to explain the who, the what, the where, and the why, the rationale for what's been occurring and the response to it. And they're on the committee, which is going on live now.
That's we'll be paying attention about that and waiting to hear back. We know there was a meeting yesterday, and there is continued other meetings taking place, so we'll be vigilant about that. And one of the things
if I could just say also, in being vigilant, there will be more public safety files coming up, including the issue with the officer, with Mr. Acevedo, and what has been taking so long. And there's some things in place that we don't want due process not to happen, so that when the accountability comes place, which is well deserved for this person, that there's no way that we can get a lawsuit, end up paying taxpayer money for a salary that isn't deserved when this person is either lost his job or in jail, or both.
Got you. Before you go, Alderman Perez, we have talked about and we recommended to the Emergency Response Collaborative to consider supporting, and they did, along with some other initiatives started earlier, the work of the Collaborative Community Committee as one of the key vehicles that the community has invested so much in to take forward in this law enforcement reform, community police relations. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, could you speak to the support that we're looking at for the Collaborative Community Committee as a vehicle where the community has already invested so much?
No, I mean, I was appreciate the invitation to participate, talk to residents at the one at Ascension Lutheran. I sat at several tables, and we put so much work into hearing the community, making recommendations, and the official body that the CCC has become through the council's approval to be the oversight from the community side for the ACLU lawsuit. And one, there's been time and energy invested. We've heard from the community. We'll continue to hear from the community. And my hope is that as we move forward healing as a city and continue to talk and listen, that the CCC become that vehicle. There's no reason to reinvent anything at all. And we could take what we have and the energy that we have and all the effort. And really, it's been legitimized by community members. It's a request from the African American Roundtable to move and to finalize its formation with new members. And I think the community is behind it. And I think we should be utilizing that as a vehicle for change and reform.
Yeah, I agree, and we appreciate your support in that area. We know you have to run off. We already took an extra minute from your committee meeting, so please keep us informed about that, and we look forward to digging in, Alderman Perez.
No, and listen, I just want to thank you. We know that there's a lot of work to do in our neighborhood. There's a lot of healing to be done, and we look forward to collaborating, talking, and working with people. As much as we have to celebrate, we got a lot of work to do, and we can't do it alone. So our community's hope is people being involved, and our hope is you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later. I'm going to take a break here to say hello. And I noticed there wasn't any questions before I let Alderman Perez go, but I want to take another look here and say hellos and catch your questions. Hola, Jerry, Maribel, Marianne, Chino, Maria, Gallegos, Maribel, Elsa, so glad you could join us this morning. Your contributions were so valuable to the Emergency Response Collaborative. Hola, Carol, Maricano, Drea. We don't have anything published yet on the Peace Initiative because it was an emergency response, but we'll finalize our info sheet, Drea, and when it's ready, we'll share it. Sebas, I heard mention about community accountability. What are some of the firm demands or plans to move ahead and hold police accountable, as well as divest from their department fund? Has there been any talk about that? Maybe funneling money towards community and needs. Yes, Sebas. So the Collaborative Community Committee, Andrea, can I have you put that link back on? There are some pieces there that we've been working on. We presented to the FPC for policy changes, SOPs. So for instance, as an example, one of them is that they formally adopt a community police policy at the FPC level, not just let it be an informal policy of MPD practice, and that community-oriented policing be defined and designed in partnership with community, not just police like perspective of what does that mean. And so what was a critical thing that we identified in that process was partnering with the community does not mean ask us for information and do what you want, or give us a survey and we design. It means coming to the table in a genuine manner, even with people you fundamentally agree on some things, and really tackling and doing that hard work. And so that's like the first SOP, and the recommendation, Sebas, came out of 45 hubs across the city giving input. And then that input being analyzed by researchers and presented in a way that we could discuss. And then out of that, we took the ones that people most frequently across all of those 45 hubs talked about. And, that's what rose our recommendations and where we started in front of the FBC. In terms of your other questions, there are lots of efforts across the city asking to hold police accountable, firing of officers. The whole recommendations have several aspects. Yes, people are concerned about how we use our city funds. The mayor has said repeatedly that all of that, our city taxes levy accounts for the police budget. We heard recently that MPS pulled $100,000 out of MPD contract and is investing it in youth, and funneling some money to other types of preventative intervention and investment. So that's all part of a lot of people's work. And then you can see our specific recommendations from the process that we undertook for almost 2 years with the community. Jacqueline, hola. Okay, folks, I want to make you aware of a minute, an event that's taking place tomorrow. And so one of the groups that we collaborate with is Team Havoc, and they and some other groups have put together a memorial for Joel Acevedo at 2 p.m. tomorrow at Mitchell Park, just to let you know. As you know, there's a lot of things happening quickly. And most of the other things that are taking place in terms of protesting racism and police brutality, that's all on Facebook. And so there are a lot of things happening. They're happening daily. You can join folks in raising their voice daily and in several different ways. So we want to make that known to you. All right. Moving on, if you have any questions about the near Southside Emergency Response Team, we didn't get a lot of time to talk about it. We'll talk about it again, but we sort of just want to let you know as soon as things are happening. And since we had our first steering committee meeting this morning to reactivate it, I want to just share that with you. Now, we can't lose sight of several other things that are happening in and around us. And so I'd like to invite our coronavirus coordinator Marlene Zoran to give us an update and reminder about our COVID-19 issues. Hola, Marlene.
Hola, how are you doing?
Very good. Go ahead and remind us and update us, Marlene.
Yeah, so I hope everybody's safe out there and utilizing your testing sites that we've sent out resources for. Currently, the mayor just announced that we are moving from the phase 2 to phase 3. If you watched our forum yesterday, we talked to Claire Evers about that, and she informed us about the changes that will be happening. So essentially, what's happening is that there's a new COVID-19 reopening plan, which means there's going to be changes made to youth summer programming. Businesses can operate at 50% capacity with a maximum of 250 people. Child care centers can operate at 50% capacity. Public/private gatherings are allowed at 25% capacity with a maximum of 250 people. So essentially what going from phase 2 to phase 3 means, phase 2 means that we're currently in yellow. So we want to get to green, essentially. So every 14 days, there's going to be a reevaluation of all data and testing. So any cases that come up in the next 14 days, the Milwaukee Health Department will take that and reevaluate the phase that we're in. So that could mean that we will be in this phase for a while, or we will get better with our with decreasing numbers in Milwaukee. So what that means, in order for us to go from phase 3 to phase 4, there's 5 phases. So there's still a bit to go. So we're currently in yellow. So that means there's 1,000 to 2,400 tests per day, or 5 to 10% positive tests for 5 days. So in order for us to get to green, we got to get 2,400 tests per day, or less than 5% positive results for 5 days. That means that if we want to get from yellow to green in regards to cases, the number of cases that need to decrease, they need to decrease by 5% for 14 days. So there's a lot of different criteria that come into figuring out what phase we're currently in. But if we, continue to social isolate and distance ourselves from individuals and continue to protect ourselves, then we will see a decrease in numbers. So, that does also mean you can go to restaurants and you can go get haircuts and stuff, but there's still restrictions and the amount of people that can be in a facility per square foot. So if you want to know that information, I would call in a restaurant or your hair salon or anywhere you want to go before arriving. So on top of that, I have someone that I interviewed. She is Lisa Mayers. She's from the University of Michigan, the researcher that we spoke with a few days ago. She has an update for us on chronic disease and COVID-19, and she's going to talk about the risks for us. So I'm going to share my screen right now with you, and you will watch a video of me talking to her about this information.
Everyone, I'm here today with Lisa Mayer, the researcher that we spoke with last week regarding COVID-19 and risks and immunological effects on the body's health. So today she's here with us to talk about risk of severe COVID-19 for individuals with chronic diseases on an overall level. So she's going to be focusing on things like individuals with diabetes and heart disease, which are very prominent within the Milwaukee community, especially on the South Side. So Lisa Mayer, if you would like to introduce yourself once again and talk about that topic.
Sure, yeah. So like Marlene mentioned, I'm a researcher at the University of Michigan. I'm working with the School of Public Health and Michigan Medicine to try to look at patients in our hospitals who were hospitalized for COVID-19. And we're looking at things like their symptoms and how long they're sick, and then how sick they get, to sort of understand better like who gets sick from COVID-19, especially who gets super sick from COVID-19. And then hopefully we can start to learn a little bit more about what can actually help those infections. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how your chronic health diseases might affect your risk of COVID-19. So I'm just going to switch that presentation. Perfect, okay. So today we're going to focus on heart disease, diabetes, and how those can affect your risk of COVID-19. So the most important thing to take away from this is that heart disease and diabetes, they don't make you more likely to catch COVID-19, but if you do catch it, you might be more likely to get very sick. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. So high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, and diabetes were all pretty common in COVID-19 patients, especially people who were hospitalized for it. One thing that was interesting is that they found among all hospitalized patients in some of these studies, they found that there were more people with these heart diseases who had to get intensive care compared to those who got regular hospital care. So this is important because if people have to go into intensive care, that means that they're sicker. So they need more attention from nurses or therapies that are a little bit more invasive and a little harder to do. Unfortunately, they also found out that people with these health conditions also had higher mortality rates. So that's another important way that we can measure risk from this disease. So first, I'll talk a little bit about heart disease and COVID-19. So the two types of heart disease that seem to be most important are coronary heart disease, which is also called coronary artery disease, and high blood pressure. So coronary heart disease happens when little plaques form on the side of your blood vessels, and they make it harder for blood to get through. High blood pressure is when your heart has to pump more than usual, or to get the same amount of blood to your body. So this is important because obviously your heart is necessary for you to stay alive, and blood flow is also especially important for your immune system, because that's one of the ways that your white blood cells and other parts of the immune response can get to parts of your body to try to get rid of this virus. So of course, like this does have kind of an overall effect on your ability to fight certain illnesses. Specific to COVID-19, some patients had cardiovascular symptoms. So they had inflammation in the heart and in the arteries. They also had some kind of unusual clotting patterns where they got blood clots that stopped the flow of blood to certain parts of their body, including places like your brain or your lungs where you could get really sick. Some COVID-19 patients also had damage to the heart muscles itself. And we're not exactly sure what the mechanisms are behind that, but it is enough to suggest that people whose hearts might already be a little bit not working their best from heart disease could be at increased risk of serious COVID-19. For diabetes, the effects are a little bit different. So one of the important parts about being diabetic is that sometimes you have more inflammation already just because of your health condition. Diabetes can also affect how your immune system works. So some people with diabetes don't have as many white blood cells as people without diabetes, and might have different kind of inflammatory marker levels. And this is both important because if you already have kind of these immune disadvantages, it's really hard for you to fight off a new virus like COVID-19. What's important to note is that if you're managing your blood sugar, it lowers your risk. So that's something that you should definitely keep in mind as you're going through this crisis. Also, viral infections make it harder for your body to regulate blood sugar. So if you did get COVID-19, you might be at higher risk of having blood sugar irregularities that could also make you sick. So you might be asking yourself, how can I stay safe? So the first and most important thing you can do is make sure that you're treating your health condition. So follow whatever plan your doctor gave to you. Make sure you're taking their medications, making any lifestyle changes that they recommend. It's important to keep eating healthy and exercising, even though sometimes that's hard with all of the things we're doing differently now during this pandemic. You also can try to avoid COVID-19 infection by limiting physical contact with others, especially if they're sick, making sure that you're washing your hands and surfaces in your home. If you do get sick, you want to call your doctor and ask them for your advice. Tell them your symptoms. They should be able to give you the best possible guidance to help take care of yourself and feel healthy again. But importantly, you should immediately seek medical help if you have any of these health symptoms below. So if you are extremely short of breath, feeling like you really, really can't breathe, if you suddenly feel confused, if you have persistent chest pain, or especially if your lips or skin are turning blue. So all of those can mean that something is seriously wrong and you need to get help. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, here are some sources that I recommend. So if you have personal medical questions, you should probably talk to your doctor. They know you best and they know your illness the best. If you want some general guidelines for yourself or others who have health conditions, heart conditions or diabetes, you can use the websites for the American Heart Association or the American Diabetes Association. Both of them have web pages that are specific to COVID-19 information. If you want to know a little bit more about the public health side of things, you can use the CDC, the WHO, or the Wisconsin Department of Health Services. And if you want to read some scientific articles to learn a little bit more about the statistics and methods, just in case you're curious, you can find those papers on PubMed or Google Scholar. Perfect. And those are just all the sources I used putting together this PowerPoint.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Yes, thank you.
Is there anything else that you would like to add on to that? Any cautionaries that individuals with chronic diseases need to take as opposed to someone who doesn't have a chronic disease?
Sure. So, obviously no one wants to get COVID-19, so everyone should be making sure that they're following the state guidelines and the CDC guidelines. Things like washing your hands more often and recommending wearing a mask in public, stuff like that. If you have a heart condition or diabetes, the basic thing is that you just need to be a little bit more careful about that. So you might not be able to take as many risks as other people have since you're at a little bit higher risk yourself. And then, like I mentioned, it's important to just make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your health. Okay,
that's awesome. Thank you for all that information.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for your time. We really appreciate you being a part of the segment.
Of course, it's good to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you to Marlene and Lisa for bringing that information. I want to ask our viewers, you participants here on the forum with us, do you have any questions that are unanswered about COVID-19, the coronavirus, that you want us to get the answers for? Marlene did a great job. She was using information that we got from Claire Evers, the Deputy Commissioner of Environmental Health, who was with us earlier. And so she was keeping you abreast on phase 3 based on what she shared with us and the announcement. Another piece that I remember her sharing is the phase we're in depends on those markers that Marlene shared. We can stay in this phase, move forward, and we can even move backward. So that's something to keep in mind. Please do share any burning questions. What's your number one question? What are you most curious about, or you're not sure of that you want us to get for you? Go ahead and leave your comments with us, and we'll make sure that we get the answers to those questions. I know we have a couple of questions floating from previous forums that we need to make sure we take care of, Marlene. We'll have to backtrack and get those. Now I'd like to invite on our Civic Engagement Manager, Gabe Charles, to give us some information about our, electoral civic engagement. Hola, Gabe.
Hi. So for those who are signed up for e-Notify, you would have gotten the recent joint statement by 14 of the 15 Alder people regarding an incident that happened during protesting this week. And I just want to read directly from the statement so you can all get a better idea of what was talked about in this joint statement. It reads, "Today we are calling for a formal investigation by the Fire and Police Commission into the video of an incident that occurred on June 2nd, showing a police officer restraining a protester using a knee to the neck and head. This incident occurred on 6th and Valete Streets during a large gathering of protesters and a large response by police. We find the officer's conduct unacceptable. The knee restraint hold helped to cause the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis when a police officer forcefully pushed on his neck for nearly 10 minutes. And it seems more than obvious that the hold should not be used by law enforcement under any circumstances. We also ask that the officer involved in the incident be removed from crowd control duty for the remainder of the protests and unrest." And just so everybody knows, we did find out from an MPD representative at the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting yesterday that this incident is under investigation, so we will definitely be following that closely. The statement also urged any protesters who have experienced mistreatment, abuse, or injury at the hands of Milwaukee police to contact the Fire and Police Commission and consider filing a complaint. This can be done by going to the FPC website at city.milwaukee.gov/FPC/complaints or via email at fpc@milwaukee.gov. And you can see that on the screen right there. And then also, as Alderman Perez mentioned, a special meeting of the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting is happening right now regarding the city's response to unrest. So a communication from the Office of the Mayor, the Milwaukee Police Department, and the Fire and Police Commission will discuss circumstances under which a curfew is declared, the policies used to enforce it, and the operational definition of the phrase civil unrest and how it is enforced. A lot happened this week, so bear with me, just a couple more things. The Common Council as a whole also met on Monday to discuss a resolution that would suspend property tax interest and penalty payments, which passed unanimously. So those penalty payments or interest payments are currently suspended and you will not be penalized for any late payments. And then also, I just want to remind folks that the deadline to submit your property assessment appeal is due Monday by 4:45 to the city assessor's office. And that can also be seen on the screen right now. The email to get the form is assessor@milwaukee.gov or use their phone number 414-286-3651. And the quickest method is going to be email at this point, so you can get that sent because it does need to arrive by the office by 4:45 on Monday. Something else that happened this week, the Steering and Rules Committee met on Monday to discuss the 2020 audit of the Fire and Police Commission. So very interesting timing that this audit came out, or the recommendations came out now. And this audit is conducted by the city's Inspector General. And this audit was to evaluate whether or not the internal controls and procedures of the Fire and Police Commission are adequate, and also to determine whether the FPC properly investigates citizens' complaints. So after an audit, recommendations are provided by the Inspector general, but are not required to be adopted as long as the findings from the audit are addressed in another way. And one of the recommendations provided calls on the FPC to implement and document policies and procedures that determine the investigation of citizen complaints, because apparently there are no formal policies right now, just guidelines. So we will definitely be following that very closely, especially as more complaints will likely be coming in based on all of the protesting that is happening right now. So again, we will be following that very closely. Despite all that is going on, it is still of utmost importance that we're filling out the census. And there are a lot of folks that end up not getting counted in the census simply because we forget that they are also important to be counted. So I'm excited to share another video with all of you that shows different people in different scenarios that also definitely need to be counted in the census. So I will let that video play and just urge everybody to use this weekend to fill out the census, and remember to send us your graduation photos that talk about how you will ensure you will get counted, because our graduates count to enter into that, to enter to win a $50 gift card. So here's the video, and I will see all of you on Monday. Have a safe weekend.
The census counts everyone in this country, and that really means everyone. A hospital patient, yes, that person counts. Newborn Benjamin, yeah, little Ben now counts. Two families that live in the same house, sure thing, they all count. Or David, who's living in his cousin Daniel's garage, he also counts. The census counts everyone to make things better for all of us.
Thank you, Gabe, for that update. Lots happening, folks. We want to make sure the information we have, you have, and we want to try to help make all the systems and processes understandable for you. So let us know how we're doing on that. If you need more information, less information, or you're curious about other things, right now, Gabe is monitoring sort of the school board activity at the city level and at the county, some things at the state, to try to keep you all in the know, and try to explain what's happening. I'm going to check here and see if we have any questions and new people to say hello to. Drea's asking that we do a segment on the body's reaction to tear gas. I'm sure that Marlene can do that. And for the staff, if you have questions and comments that we can handle in the staff meeting, let's do that and leave this space for residents. But if you think it's something the residents need to hear, then feel free to do that, okay? Carlos, how can we keep track of investigations that are ongoing regarding complaints of police brutality? I believe that when you file a complaint, you have the right to check on that. We'll find details in terms of what the community has access and doesn't have access to. And then I know that there are reports on some type of cyclical basis, maybe annual, maybe more frequently, but we'll get the specific answers to that. I know that the FPC puts out reports on the number of investigations, I believe what type, and what was the resolution, but we'll get more specific answers. Great question to both of you. All right. We want to make sure that you know what's going to be happening next week so that you come back and share with us. And Monday, we have Karen Rodker of the ACLU. She'll be talking about that ACLU law settlement that was responding to the illegal stop and frisks of residents. All the things that are happening under there, including that they named the Collaborative Community Committee as the oversight committee to ensure that things are handled well. And then Dr. Baez, a legacy civil rights leader, bilingual education, Latino rights, is going to be with us. He's also our school board director for the Near South Side. And then Dr. Rob Smith will be back also again with us. And he's a professor at Marquette University. He's also the director of the Center for Research, Urban Research Teaching and Outreach. And then it looks like we'll be able to bring Office of Violence Prevention staff in. They've been super, super busy with all that's been happening. But just to keep us keep us engaged and in partnership with them. I also want to remind you that we still are running our 10 weeks. I didn't prepare the staff for this, so it's okay, staff, if you don't have it available. I just want to remind you all, it occurred to me during the program, that we're still running our One Clean Community campaign for 10 weeks. So if you want to do a mini cleanup while you're already walking, you as an individual, as couples, as a family, please contact our office. We have a whole little program going on. We want to complete 100 cleanups across the city during quarantine, and we want everybody to cooperate with those. We're in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are protesting racism and police brutality. We don't want to forget and not say George Floyd's name during this time. Our prayers and thoughts with his family who celebrated his life and had a memorial yesterday, and continue the charge for justice. And then, of course, we are still engaged as a community over the murder of Joel Acevedo, and want to ensure that that process is continuing. Gabe shared about that investigation the FPC took from MPD and is taking forward. Remind you again that tomorrow there's Team Havoc and a group of their collaborators is holding a memorial for Joel Acevedo at 2 p.m. at Mitchell Park. We want to lastly remind you again that today is Orange Day. The Office of Violence Prevention is hosting, I believe this is their 7th year of hosting it here locally, remembering and trying to educate and prevent around gun violence in honor of Breonna Taylor. And this is her 27th birthday. And she's no longer with us because of violence. And her favorite color was orange. And so that's what we're honoring today. And last, I don't want to lose sight of folks. We know everybody's hurting in general from the unresolved issues here in our nation and locally. We also know that folks are hurting, especially, our moms and families who lost loved ones to police brutality. And even some of our police officers who lost their life in the line of duty, because we know we have some good police officers as well. But last, as well, I don't want to lose sight of, we have a lot of hurting people in our community because they've lost a loved one to COVID-19. And we talked about those statistics earlier. And most of those are, folks 60, 70, and 80, but we know that younger people are dying in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. We don't have the data on children yet. And that's one of the questions, Marlene, I have for the commissioner. But we know you're hurting. And that was also very painful because many of those people could not have their family at their sides. And so those are the things we kind of have to think about as we reopen and people are making decisions about risks. Generally speaking, the statistics that they were sharing, it's most healthy younger folks aren't going to die for it, but it's our grandparents. And if there's something that's super tragic about that, is imagine your grandparents isolated in the hospital with COVID in their last days. And so let's err on the side of caution to keep our abuelos and abuelas safe during this time until we can get a vaccine or a treatment. Let's be extra cautious. Even if you don't believe in it, will it hurt you to be extra cautious in the event that you're gonna transfer, you're not symptomatic and you're gonna get someone else sick, and maybe somebody loses their grandparents because of that, or someone they love who already has health issues. All right, so our prayers and thoughts are with you all who are dealing with the illness, who dealt with loss, and our community as a whole, our small business community, and all the division that's happening among some people. So our thoughts are with you. Please be safe, and we hope to have you with us back next week. I ask a favor, please fill out our survey. It only takes 5 minutes, even less than that. If you could do that, if you appreciate that we're on here with you in any degree, that's the thing we would ask for in return, because we need it for our funders and to continue responding. We reviewed your surveys just today when we put our program together for next week. So we look at that. And so we want to make sure that we're meeting your needs. Thank you, and we want to leave you with our thank you video for our funding partners. Stay safe.
Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to SOC's Live Forum today. My name is Jeanette, and I am the resident lead for South of the Tracks Polonia Resident Group. Today, we'd like to thank some sponsors: Wisconsin Voices, Community Development Block Grant, Neo Philanthropy State Infrastructure Fund, Movement Voter Project, Catholic Campaign for Human Development, Zilber Foundation, City of Milwaukee Office of Violence Prevention, Tides Foundation, City of Milwaukee Promise Zones, and all the faithful individuals who support SOC through their personal donations. We thank you. We hope you all are staying safe. Talk to you soon.